the original miniseries of V began, we saw what is now a familiar alien invasion scene. People living their normal lives, working at their jobs, watching TV, until life stands still as giant alien saucers roll into the atmosphere and hover over our heads. When the first visitor named John came to Earth, people noticed that these aliens looked like us, and John announced to the world that they came in peace. Where have we heard that before? John went on to say that their planet was in need of some of our resources like water, and if we share that with them, they will share some of their advanced secrets in science with us. But thanks to a daring reporter named Mike Donovan, we found out that it was, and get ready for this, a big lie. They were planning to take all of Earth's resources and stock up on human beings as food. And underneath their fake human skin, they were actually a reptilian species. Donovan went on to join Julie Parrish and other freedom fighters that called themselves the Resistance in what became an entertaining war of human versus lizard. Marc Singer was a perfect fit to play Donovan on the show. He was a cool, fearless, and heroic character, and he was a pretty good shot with a laser gun. Growing up, the only other character that high on the awesome meter in my book was Luke Skywalker, and that's pretty good company. Marc is with us today to talk about Mike Donovan and the series known as V. Well, Marc, thank you so much for joining us today on Beyond the Screens. It's great to talk to you.
Same here. Thanks for inviting me. It's always good to get a chance to talk to you. I know that we've been trying to communicate for a long time now, and our schedules have sort of missed one another.
Well, you know, the important thing is that we finally connected, and here we are, and I'm looking forward to our discussion.
Me too.
My first question for you is, are you a fan yourself of science fiction, and was the opportunity to fight evil aliens part of what drew you to the role of Mike Donovan?
You know, I guess so. Inherently, I guess so. When I was a kid, everything in the movies and everything in television, broadly speaking, that interested in my adventurous sense as a young man was either war movies or they were westerns. And I loved science fiction because I loved to read, and I read all the old classic science fiction. I read Jules Verne and Arthur C. Clarke and Ray Bradbury. But when I got into film, the Western genre was kind of dying out, and science fiction took its place.
Well, and then you know, here recently you had a show like Firefly that combined Western and science fiction.
Yeah, which just goes to show that anything's possible. And then all of the people who are attributing a lot of our past, including the pyramids, to visitations from alien races now get to kind of leapfrog forward in history to the Old West.
The thing that still kind of wows me about V is what they pulled off, not just for the 1980s, but 1980s television,
right.
As far as the visuals. And like one of the most memorable visuals I have was Donovan getting chased. He was on horseback, and you have this visitor shuttle that comes in from behind and is literally firing at you as you're riding through these fields and these woods. To me, that still looks cool.
It is. You know, look at you. You pinpointed exactly the synthesis, that moment of nexus between cowboys and space. That was some of the most fun filming. I remember to this day the joy of riding that big white horse. It was a kind of a retired racehorse, and so it loved to run.
Ah, okay.
And the nice thing about working on V was it was almost like going to play every day. Anything you wanted to do that they could figure out how to do, you could suggest, and they'd do it. So some of those shots, like me riding through the woods with the bark hits, the explosions going off beside us, that actually was an idea of mine that I wanted to do because I wanted to imitate the old westerns where the good guy was fleeing the posse and shooting back over his shoulder.
Really?
Oh, yeah. That was a definite homage to my old childhood. That was the stock piece of footage in every Western was the posse chasing the guy on the horse.
That's right.
Yeah.
And it was a great scene, and I have to assume, too, that not only was that fun, but you can tell us a little bit how they kind of put it all together, but I'm sure that once you had the opportunity to sit and see the finished product with all the effects like the shuttle and everything else, that had to be a thrill as well.
You know, the first time that the entire cast and crew assembled in a gigantic theater, because by then there were so many people that worked on the show and special effects and all the other aspects of it, the first time that we all got together and saw this thing that we'd been working on for 3 or 4 months, solid, sometimes 22 hours a day.
Wow.
Finally, we saw it on the screen, and it blew our minds. It blew us away. We had no idea that what we were creating was going to be so monumental. And I have to say, it's one of the few times in going to see any film that I participated in that I have to say that my jaw hit the floor. I was unprepared for it.
Yeah, and that was definitely the effect it had on audience members, too. I remember it very, very well.
Yeah.
And not only do you have that effect component with the technology and the shuttles and the laser guns, but the other component of this that I thought they pulled off real well, and you were like the first person to do this since Donovan was the one that exposed them for who they were,
Right.
was the peeling off the skin and having that scaly figure, that lizard underneath, when you got into that fight for the first time, and I would figure that had to be a fun experience as well.
Well, it was fun in a couple of ways. I'm gonna hearken back to riding the horse through the woods and being chased by the posse, even if the posse was in a spaceship in the air above me and behind me. The stunt in that fight that you're talking about, where I reach up and grab hold of the alien's face and his skin comes away and we realize that he's really a lizard, a giant kind of lizard man underneath. The stunt that we performed in that fight is one, again, that I designed and suggested, and they saved that stunt for the very last shot of the entire shoot because the possibility was that I would either break my hip or break my back. And the thing that I want to point out, the reason I bring it up is because what V enabled us to do, those of us who wanted to and who had a sense of this kind of aspect of film making and film history, was we got to participate in a way that actors like John Wayne used to participate back in the day, in the golden age of filmmaking, where you brought to work as an actor in your kit bag to work all this physical stuff that you could do and wanted to do that you didn't even consider was a stunt. It's just part of what acting is. And so in that fight, I got to get slammed up on a roof way up over a doorway and fall down onto a thing, and it did hurt. But
Yeah, I bet.
It was fun.
Then they threw a little humor in there as well. I always think of the scene where that really beautiful blonde woman comes in, who's going to bust you out of the mothership, and she takes off her uniform, and you look at her and you say, well, you sure don't look like an iguana.
Yeah, there was a lot of that. The first time there's a scene, a memorable scene in the film that many of the fans might remember, and that is the first time that the evil alien leader Diana first swallowed a rat.
Yeah.
Since there wasn't any CGI to speak of, they brought in a head modeled to look exactly like hers. They brought it in all made up and looking exactly like her with hair and everything else. It was made of latex and had a pump handle sticking out the back. And when you depressed the pump handle, the jaw opened up, and in went this rat. And when we all saw this, they said, "Come here, we want to show you this thing we're going to shoot." All of us veterans of film by that time, we all walked over and said, "Yeah, go ahead and show us. We've seen everything. Show us."
Yeah.
And when that jaw came open, everybody ran for the corner. We all were like, "Well, that's too much for me. I got to get out of here."
You didn't know whether to watch or close your eyes or run from it or whatever.
It was too late. We were already scarred by it.
Oh, man. Well, and that became something that happened a lot. It became, when's the next mouse eating scene?
I know. I always felt very grateful as the show progressed from season to season that I never was cast to eat one, because the prop department got very good at making these rodents out of marzipan and brown chocolate and some sort of cotton candy hair.
Oh, my God.
They filled them with jelly. And so whoever had to eat those had to get past a pretty strong visual in the first place.
What a visual.
I know.
Cotton candy mice filled with jelly.
I know.
Well, I'd like to touch on some of the cast members that you worked with, because they were all so very good, and you had to work very closely with some of them. As fans, not only did we want Mike Donovan to come in and, show the lizards a thing or two, but also there was Ham Tyler there with you as well, and, and brought his unique style to the conflict. Can you talk a little bit about working with Michael Ironside?
I think it was a very necessary addition to the show. We were like yin and yang,
Definitely.
One was light and one was dark, and he certainly brought forward the darker element. And I sort of like that in the telling of a story, that not everybody's of a single mind and a single personality, even if we're on the side of justice and righteousness, but that there are darker elements within the movement to give it texture. And I think he was a really good addition in that way.
Yeah, especially since, he'd kind of call you on it. He had that nickname for you, called you Gooder.
Yeah.
Do-gooder. And then you mentioned Diana before. I mean, you had great chemistry with not only Michael Ironside, but Frank Ashmore, who was Martin, and Faye Grant, who played Julie. There's a lot of good pictures on your IMDb page working with Faye Grant.
I just want to touch on very briefly. Faye Grant played one of the leaders of the resistance. Either I was her sidekick or she was mine, depending on how you look at it.
Yeah.
I've had the pleasure of seeing many performances that she's given over the years in different roles, and I have to say, her talent and her capacity as an actress just knocks me out. She is a really, I think, although she certainly is appreciated, I think she could be even more appreciated because she's an amazing actress with great versatility and plays a wide range of roles in many parts.
Definitely. Well, then there's, of course, Jane Badler, who played Diana. It was always fun when you two crossed paths, and getting to see her again even in the new series, it looks like that she's a lot of fun to work with, and she plays a really good villain. How was working with her and having that fun chemistry of being rivals against one another?
I occasionally, of all the cast members, Jane and I occasionally cross paths. And I just saw her again about, I guess within the last couple or 3 months. And she's one of the most delightful people to be around. And she's also funny because she has a great sense of humor. Mm-hmm. But she's also very funny because she's one of those people that doesn't know she's funny. So you can be anywhere. You can be in a restaurant. You can be having an interview. You can be doing anything, and she's always funny. I traveled through Italy with her on a tour on behalf of V. I think we were receiving the Italian Emmy for that, and I might as well have been invisible because the Italian men took one look at Jane Badler walking down the street, and they practically fell out of the windows.
Yeah, you bet.
Oh man. But I love her. Janie is just a gem of a human being, and I just love her.
Yeah, and of course, I see Frank Ashmore too on the airplane movies every once in a while and go, "Hey, there's Martin." He's doing something completely different. He's having to be in that wacky airplane crew.
In the wacky airplane crew, and also Freddy Krueger.
Yeah, I was going to ask you about that. Did you just double take when all of a sudden Willie becomes this killer with the knives on the hands?
Yeah, my jaw hit the floor because he's one of the sweetest, gentlest souls, and again, really, really fun and easy to be with. Somebody that when you spend time with him, you sort of feel that you're in the right spot on Earth for a moment because he's one of those people that makes everything feel just right.
Yeah.
He also has an encyclopedic knowledge of film history and film lore, so that if you mention to him a film from the 1940s or 50s or 30s or 70s or 60s, it doesn't matter. He'll tell you who was the cinematographer, who did the hair and makeup.
Wow.
It's amazing, his knowledge of film. There's an artist who really studies his craft.
No kidding. Those people are amazing. Were you able to hold on to anything from the show? Any of your props or laser guns or anything when everything wrapped up the last time?
I think the only prop that I retained was one of the laser guns. I have that.
That's great.
We worked so long, so hard. I wasn't kidding when I said that we actually worked 22-hour days sometimes. We worked so long and so hard that when the show finally was over, I remember that Wardrobe wheeled two of those carts that clothing hang on, with the iron pipe across, and then and there must have been at least a dozen uniforms and as many pairs of boots and belts and hats and sunglasses and so forth. And they said, we don't have anything to do with this now. Do you want any of this? And I said, no, thank you. No, I'm kind of done. Thank you very much.
Wow.
No, I wish I'd held on to it.
Yeah.
Oh, by the way, I just, you were talking earlier about the spacecraft that used to chase us around.
Yeah, the little shuttles.
Yeah. Again, since it was before CGI, those things were real.
Yeah.
We had an entire gigantic hangar full of various sizes of those, from the size of a Greyhound bus down to the size of medium-sized dump trucks that would hold only 2 or 3 people. And so in any given day and in any scene, you could be in that gigantic hangar surrounded by all these actual spacecraft each of which had complete innards and all of the controls and gears and so forth in them. It was a pretty amazing and lavish production.
Yeah, and like I said, it looked really, really good.
Yeah, exactly. That's why I think it's also so important for actors to be of an adventurous kind of turn of mind in the first place, an adventurous spirit. So you want to do as many of your own stunts as you can, so that you can keep that level of believability as high as possible, that identifiability.
Well, I was fired up when I found out that they were going to bring the show back in a new incarnation on ABC not long ago.
Right.
And how did everything fall into place for you? I remember when they got Jane back on for season 2, the excitement that caused, and we heard that you were going to be there as well. Right. How did all that come into place for you where you were able to pick up the role of Lars in the remake of the show?
Well, it had a couple of aspects that were kind of interesting. I think that it's more difficult for them to figure out what role I should play in the production. They had to find a way of integrating me without having me take them into a direction that their story couldn't support, because they'd started their story in a different time, in a different place. So the way I looked at Lars was that he really was going to be revealed at some further date as Mike Donovan. And that Lars was an alias that he was using.
Really?
Yeah, that was, and I think had we gone forward, that might have been a direction. I can't speak definitively, but that might have been a direction that we would have explored.
Wow. Well, fans would have gone nuts.
Yeah, exactly. It was unfortunate that the show didn't have enough life left in it by the time I came on board for that one last single episode to have explored that further, but I think that would have been a good creative choice.
Definitely. Well, and speaking for myself, and I'm sure many other fans, we were really looking forward to seeing you back and seeing you there, and I wish they would have figured out a way to maybe introduce you a little sooner in Season 2, because, obviously they didn't renew for Season 3, and I watched both seasons, and I've seen all of the original.
Right.
I think one of the main reasons the first series I still think was better than that second series was just an action component. Right. We were just talking about things that you were doing. Running through the forest and horseback, or fighting in the mothership or out in the streets. There was always some sort of action going on, and I think that's what fans were really, really wanting to happen in that show, and we just never got there. It's unfortunate, because I think they could have brought somebody like you in sooner in that second season and really taken the action to a whole nother level.
I appreciate your kind thoughts. And that is what I'm talking about. I would have certainly brought and hopefully had a chance to employ a real personal approach to the action, because after all, it's supposed to be every man up on the screen. It's supposed to be every woman. It's supposed to be us. We're the ones that are out there and cornered and trying to find our way out and having to surmount what seem to be impossible odds. And the best way to do that is on a personal level. Figure it out and duke it out.
People also know you from playing Dar in the Beastmaster, and I'm sure you've run across some fans from that show, as well as V, when you've gone to some autograph conventions and whatnot here of late. And I would assume for it to be 2012 and have the interest so high, not only in science fiction, but shows that were so good and so classic and seem to have really long legs, that it has to be really rewarding to go to these conventions and see fans and new generations of fans that are very passionate about not only V, but your involvement in it.
I appreciate that. Thank you very much. Yes, it's very gratifying. I'm very grateful to the fans, and it makes me feel good how well they treat me. And when I get a chance to interact with them, it's very exciting for me, and hopefully rewarding for them as well. I know that it's a privilege to have been able to identify myself as the Beastmaster and to identify myself as Mike Donovan, and I take that as a responsibility. Not just for the gratification of being a part of film history in Hollywood, but I take it as a responsibility on behalf of what it represents for people that really appreciate film and really appreciate science fiction and
Sure.
really love the art form and the storytelling form of film. And so I'm always grateful that somebody expresses some appreciation for it whenever we meet.
Well, and the better news is I know that you're still involved in it all and still working on some things. Tell everybody some of the things you've been working on here of late and what we can look forward to seeing you in here in the coming weeks.
Oh, okay, all right, yeah. You know, I just returned from Charlottesville, Virginia, which has a well-respected filmmaking community. Each year it hosts its own film festival, the Charlottesville Film Festival, Charlottesville, Virginia. And I was fortunate enough to make a film just recently with a very talented director named Eric Hurt. And the film is called House Hunting. And house hunting, you were talking about sci-fi and chillers and thrillers, can also encompass sci-fi, or which sci-fi can also encompass. And this is a kind of a sci-fi chiller, house hunting. It concerns a couple of families whose paths cross in a very, very tense situation as they both come together to explore a house that's for sale way off in the country. And I just got through making that. And as I say, Eric Hurt, who is the writer, director, producer, is an extremely talented filmmaker. And Haley Dumond, Art LaFleur, Victoria Vance, these are wonderful actors that I had a chance to work with, to name just a few. And I think people will really enjoy this. It should be released, I think, sometime soon in this coming year.
Well, Mark, as the host of this show, I want to thank you for a really great conversation and for joining us today. And as a fan, I want to thank you for being here and allowing me to have the opportunity to also share with you my passion for V and for the character of Mike Donovan.
Well, I also, as we wrap up, I know that one of the themes of this show are people that you used to play, right?
Yeah, I ran a show back in June called If I Could Be Like Mike Donovan, and it was all about people that we wanted to be that we were watching on TV, and that's who I was every day at school.
I can't tell you how happy that makes me to know, and I'm sure you did the I'm Spirit of Mike Donovan proud.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much. Yeah, I was very, very driven to do it right. You can bet on that.
I'm glad to share the karma.
Well, I appreciate it. Thank you very much, and I hope to get a chance to talk with you again, and thanks again for being on the show today.
It's been a real pleasure. Hi, this is Marc Singer. I played Mike Donovan in the science fiction series V. Scott Murray also played Mike Donovan in school. And thanks to him, no lizards ever infiltrated the classroom. Long live the resistance. This is Beyond the Screens.